Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Pioneer live stream. We're very excited to have you with us today. Today we have companies from around the world that are Pioneer graduates presenting their businesses. And so hopefully it should make for a fun discussion. We have folks from New York, Germany, Japan, Turkey, and the Bay Area itself. That sort of should give you a sense of what Pioneer is all about, which, if you don't know, is basically a sort of an international startup accelerator. We find people that are sort of very early on in the story and journey of the product that they're building and try to fund them and help them turn an idea into a business, get funded by others, other accelerators, other investors. That's a bit about us. If you are sort of unfamiliar with any of what we're doing, the website is pioneer.app. As I mentioned, presenting 5 companies today. The way this is going to work is we sort of we like to be untraditional and in untraditional spirit. We're not just going to have a presentation. Every company will sort of have 2 minutes to sort of present what they're doing. And then we're going to have a rapid chat with myself and Andrew, who works with me at Pioneer. You guys hopefully are viewing this through our interface. We have an opportunity to use our sort of internal IRC WhatsApp to chat with other viewers and the presenting Pioneers too, if you want to sort of catch them as they go out off stage. There's also sort of a point system where you can award points to your favorite Pioneers, and so I'm sure you could all sort of figure that out as a way to sort of attest the companies you find most interesting today. Lastly, if you find any of the companies interesting, you can follow them. There should be a button for that, hopefully. This lets us put you in touch with them and so forth. And so if anyone's sort of watching is a capital allocator interested in figuring out how to allocate capital into one of these businesses, hopefully that makes it easier for you. All right, so that's the spiel. I think we're just about ready to go. We're going to get started with a team in New York called Tether. I'm going to have Dan and Dalton come up, and then you guys are going to present, and then Andrew, who works with me at Pioneer, is going to chime in and sort of pepper you with questions afterwards. But first, Dan and Dalton, please take it away. Tell us all about Tether.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. As Daniel mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tether, and we make bug reporting as easy as one click. Imagine trying to resolve an issue, and this is how you're getting feedback. It's dispersed across multiple channels, and more importantly, it lacks the proper context for you to take next steps. Whether that's visual context, like a screen recording or proper screenshot, or technical context, like knowing what's going on underneath the hood. We've talked with hundreds of companies, and we found this to be a pretty typical process for bug reporting and feedback internally. As you can see, it requires multiple pieces of software, many steps, and it's a huge time sink. Tether is software that solves all these problems. Tether is a widget installed on top of any website or web application that allows your users, your team, to take screenshots and screen recordings directly from that site. No need to jump between different applications or switch contexts. You can add voice, markup, and so that when you submit that feedback, it's going to be clear. Everything lives in one place, centralized on the Tether dashboard, where we store all that juicy technical data for you. And it cuts that typical 9-step process down to 2 steps, saving teams tons of time. My partner Dalton and I decided to work on Tether when we were scaling our software development agency here in New York. As we got more clients, more users, handling feedback from start to finish across these projects became a huge pain, and we built Tether to solve our own problem. Once we saw how effective it was, we knew there was a bigger opportunity here. And so we joined Pioneer in June, and that's when we went full time with Tether. And since then, we're growing about 20% month over month for our MRR, about 72% month over month for our MAUs. And we've had the opportunity to work with some really fantastic companies. And we're already building kind of a devout following of fans that really love us because we're solving burning problems for them. We've seen teams switch from traditional tool Loom and get rid of manual processes like Google Sheets. And the positive feedback so far has been invigorating. We see bug reporting and feedback as our first step towards a platform that helps our users build better products that are grounded in feedback rather just than in intuition. And we're currently closing out a pre-seed round. We have most of it committed already. And so if there's any investors like to chat, please let me know. And if anyone's out there that wants to try Tether, you can go to our site and kick off a free 2-week trial. Thanks.
All right, great presentation, Dan. Let's kick it off with a question about differentiation. So there are a few companies out there that do bug reporting as well. How are you doing things differently?
Well, I think most of the companies that do it currently are either pretty outdated. There hasn't been a new entrant in a while, so they lack the kind of modern UI and UX that we accommodate. Additionally, the Loom style recording, which we found to be a really good way to deliver high context feedback, is something that's unique to us. And additionally, there's no Chrome extension required. You can do it without authentication, so it's super easy access. Has the ability to be used both internally and externally.
Got it. And what's your vision for Tethered over the next like 5 years? How does the product evolve?
Yeah, so I touched on this like a little bit in there, but we have really big plans. Our goal has always kind of been to be a feedback company. So we want to help people build better products that are grounded in feedback, and not so much intuition or whatever the CEO thinks is a good idea or a new shiny thing to chase. And so that's feedback internally, making sure you get the most from your team, and then also externally being really tied into the end user's voice. And so we think there's a lot of things we can do in that space to help make sure that you're launching the right features, being at the center of this loop of build, launch, get feedback, iterate. We think we can provide a lot of value there.
Got it. And can you kind of walk me through the roadmap here? Because it sounds like you're starting with, this centralized place to do bug reporting, making it easy for both external users and internal users to kind of get around like kind of the same interface. What's like the next step for you, and how does that help you build towards this vision like 5 years from now?
Yeah, it's a great question. We spent a lot of time working on this internal use case first, because that's what we felt at our agency. It was mostly internal or with clients, not really end user facing. And just recently, in the past, 8 weeks, we launched our first end user widget. And so the next kind of step is kind of polishing that experience. We have some users that are already hooked up and using it. And so it's getting feedback for them, polishing it up a little bit more. And then additionally, getting further ingrained into the end user kind of applications that we're in. So being smarter about the feedback that we're on, not just being a widget that's always there, but allowing us to be intelligently, thrown to specific users, and just making sure that we can help the people using us make intelligent decisions and be able to talk to their users in an effective way.
So you've gotten great feedback from users so far. I took a look at G2 and saw that you're one of like the top rated options for this category. What have you learned from these like early conversations with users?
That's a good question. We learned a lot about what not to build, and that kind of has guided us to what to build. We've learned that agency owners really love the fact that this gives their clients a good experience. It upgrades the client experience very drastically. So not only do they love the time saved internally, but now they kind of have this almost red carpet experience, which is what one of our agencies called it, that a red carpet experience for clients, because it processes it, makes it into a process. And so that was big. One thing that was really big for us was that when we were just doing the internal feedback, everybody would ask us like, oh, this is cool and this is helpful, and like we're loving it internally, but can we use it for end users? Can we use it for end users? And the answer was always like, okay, no, not quite yet, not yet. Because we really wanted to nail that experience first, and we didn't want to go too wide quickly, which I think is something that startups always have to be wary of. So then eventually, after nailing that internal process, that external feedback got pulled out of us, and that was probably the biggest learning so far.
Nice. All right, one last question from me. It sounds like you guys started working on this, like the idea came out of when you and Dalton worked together on the agency. So understandable that a lot of these like early clients, come from the same cloth. How do you think about your go-to-market here? Like, what does it look like, I guess, for the first 10 customers, and then for the next 100, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so we already have 13 teams paying up and using the platform. And so, like you said, those initial ones were people in our connections, people that we knew we could talk to, agencies that we knew quite well. And we're able to get really good distribution through them. The agency world is pretty tight knit. And so once people see that, hey, this has been validated by 5 other agencies in the city, they know it's a good product. But additionally, kind of go to market going further, we just launched a freemium plan, which allows SaaS companies to put our end user widget on their site. Some features are locked down, but we think that will be a good kind of growth hack for us, because every widget that is on a site is kind of like a billboard for us. There's a powered by Tether, and people get to interact with that. So we think that's another kind of cyclical loop that we could have in the background on top of all this kind of agency distribution that we'll have.
That makes sense. Dan and Dalton, thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Continued success. Next up, I'd like to bring up Noorvir, who lives in Germany, and will be telling us a little bit about Unweave. Take it away.
Right. Hey, Andrew. So my name is Noorvir. I'm going to present Unweave, which makes machine learning a lot less painful. Machine learning is pretty magical. As we've seen in the last few months, we have these amazing new image models, which take simple human language and convert it into fantastic imagery. What if you wanted to do something like this from scratch? The truth is that you'd run into a lot of problems. And that's because often what you don't see is that behind these enormous models is a lot of backend engineering and tooling that make the barrier to entry really high. Even if you ignore the productionizing aspect of it and focus just on experimentation and tinkering, there's still a whole range of new tools that you'd have to learn just to get started. So this is what Unweave solves. Unweave lets you focus on your code while we figure out how to actually run it. So this is best explained through a demo. So here I have a terminal on my local laptop. If I look inside, I have a training script. I have some dependencies that have an Unweave store, which is where all our data lives. To run this with Unweave, we first need to tell it where to find the code. I can do it by doing Unweave link. And I'm going to link it to a project I created earlier with the same name. Next, I can run a command I would normally run on my local laptop, but prefix it with Unweave. In this case, I'm going to run it with a GPU. And as soon as I execute, Unweave will figure out how to build my environment, build it, and run it completely serverlessly in the cloud, and stream the logs back to my local laptop. We also have a dashboard, and I have the same project here as I have on my local terminal. We can do everything from the browser as you can from the terminal. So for example, we can look at the logs for the experiment I just ran. But more importantly, you can look at what data you ran with the experiment that you just executed. And this is really important in machine learning because you want to have a lineage of exactly what code and data you ran. So that when something goes wrong, you can go back in time and look at what data you ran with this particular experiment. So we're a team of two. I did machine learning for the last 4 years. And before that, worked in data engineering at Tesla. Mark worked in core Kubernetes tools for ML infrastructure. And before joining Unweave, he deployed AI models that served over 1 billion requests a day. We're in early beta and we're actively onboarding users. And if you're an investor, we're also raising an angel round.
All right, good presentation, good energy. Now, tell us a little bit about, obviously this market's very crowded and there's all sorts of, people, there's CoreWeave and Banana and I guess, AWS. How are you different?
Sure, so a lot of the players in this market are focusing on deploying machine learning. So that's, so for example, Banana Dev, there's Sedon and so on. So there's a lot of these companies that are taking your Jupyter notebooks once your data scientist has prepared them and like deploying them somehow. Which is great. That's why we're not targeting that market. What we're focusing on is the training aspect, because one of the big problems here is that your data scientist runs a Jupyter notebook, trains something, and then hands it off to the dev team. And there's a big sort of gap in turning training environments into development. What we do is build your training environment, and so we know what the dependencies are. And so when it comes time to actually put into deployment, we'll be in a really good space to give you a button which says.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand you properly. So you're basically saying there's companies right now that sort of help you deploy your Jupyter notebook, you run your experimentation in the cloud, good stuff. But those companies are actually not great, is what I'm hearing you say, at running those models like in stable production in a way that they're sort of natively integrated into your app. And you're sort of focused on that. Is that right? Is that a good distillation?
No, sorry, it's the opposite.
Completely different. It's a completely different company.
No, it's similar. It's those companies are focused on they do a great job in deploying it to production. They're very stable, but the issue is going from the training environment to the production environment. So that's not really possible to solve. So you need an engineer in there who converts from the data scientist's mind and his environment to taking it to giving it to the production team and some of these tools that will then deploy it into production. What we do is we give you training environments. So we don't do any deployment. We give you a training environment. And because it's all automated, so every time you run something with Unweave, we build your entire environment so that if something's broken, it breaks right away. It'll tell you right away that, hey, your dependency is missing. So it never happens that you go to the production point and you don't have a dependency that you had locally. So that's what we're focusing on right now. We will eventually go to deployment, but that's a very crowded market, like you said.
Got it. So it's a bit more like Docker and a little bit less like Heroku. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So because it's machine learning, a lot of it is like very experimental. So you run an experiment, it doesn't work out, you throw it away. And 1 out of 100 works out and you want to deploy that. And we help you sift through that. Because
Noorvir, tell us a little bit about why'd you start working on this?
Sure. So I worked as a machine learning engineer before this, and the way we collect data is by going to the lab space. It was a robotics company. We like either manually collect it or there were customers who were streaming in their data. And it was really like there's no workflow for where that data is being stored. How do you share it with your colleagues? And if you delete a file that you ran a model with, that sort of completely destroyed the whole workflow. What I really wanted was like to have my MacBook Pro have infinite processing power, infinite storage. And that's very much the vision of Unweave, that you should work as if you're on your local laptop, but all the tough part of like provisioning cloud compute and so on is completely abstracted away. But nonetheless, you can dive deep as much as you want. So we want it to be fully configurable, and you can dive down to the raw compute nodes if you want.
Years ago, you worked at Tesla. Is there anything you sort of learned there that informs the way you do product development now?
Yeah, so the thing at Tesla was, or one of the things that was like an eye opener was how quickly they did iteration. So there was parts on the factory floor that went from like, instead of part A, B, and C, it was like A, B. So the number of iterations on cars going out there, that's very much what we're trying to do. It's, again, as a startup, there's lots of iterations. So we've gone through multiple different products. We initially started out doing only data versioning, kind of like DVC. But what we learned very quickly is you need your data and compute to sit right next to each other to really to take advantage of, like, firstly versioning, and secondly just like egress costs that are prohibitively expensive. So it's the iteration that Tesla is really good at, which I'm trying to now adopt it at Unweave.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Is there anything else that you think is really important for us to understand? You know, the machine learning landscape is unfolding so quickly. There's new sort of seems like every single day there's a new breakthrough. I imagine you're sort of closer to this than most. Sort of, yeah. Help us understand how, you know, where things are going and sort of where Unweave sits in that broader story. Like, given, you know, where the world of AI or ML will be in 3 or 4 years, sort of what do you think is going to be different about that reality than today, and how do you fit into that?
True. So one of the things I mentioned early on in the slide is when you train these enormous models, like the models behind the algorithm behind them is really like simple. It's not easy, but it's very straightforward. It's a transformer that has lots of data that comes in and pushes it up. But there's a huge amount of engineering effort that takes into, you know, training these models in a distributed manner. Each one of those trainings costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. That cost will come down, but the engineering effort of distributing these compute loads across multiple nodes and so on is still like a really big engineering challenge. So that's what we're trying to solve. We're trying to abstract away all the engineering you'd require, the data engineering team and the infrastructure team you'd require to train a model like this yourself. It's very early days, so right now we're sort of only on a few GPUs at a time. That's where we want to go. That you as an engineer or like a newcomer to the field, take your laptop, you dump some data onto it, and you can really rapidly iterate and take the last output and pump it into something new.
The question that's sort of unsolved, I think, in the machine learning sort of Cambrian explosion today is what sort of ML APIs look like. Meaning, if you look at OpenAI, it's sort of like a very simple API where you put in text, you get more text, maybe a little bit of fine tuning. And if you like look at Stable Diffusion, where there's open source stuff, you could sort of see a simple API is sort of not what people want, and they want something. Everyone sort of wants to slightly train their own model, but then again, you know, training your own model from scratch is also really complicated too. And I guess when databases were getting really big, it was nice because there's just really simple abstraction. There was SQL, and so like everyone understood sort of how to plug into a SQL thing. What do you think is going to happen with ML? Like, how is this all going to fan out? Do you think that we'll be using relatively simple APIs like what's offered by OpenAI, or do you think will everyone train their own model? If something in between, what does that something in between look like?
So far, I think the fine tuning. I don't know any models that won't require fine tuning for something that's not a generic.
Okay, so your view is that like there'll be base models. There'll be base models that you go and get, and then you sort of fine tune it on your bespoke case, and that's sort of the equivalent of SQL.
Yeah, in the near term, at least, it's moving so fast that in 10 years, maybe you have a model that does it all. I really couldn't predict that. But for the moment, maybe not for image generation, for example, but if you're, for example, the last company I worked at, like a robotics company that wants to weld a joint on a very specific looking part on a car, like you don't see that part very often. So you take some model that's really good at detecting, you know, like flat surfaces and fine tune it to your particular use case.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is make that part really easy. So we have one of the things I didn't demo is you can take a Git repo and deploy it really quickly, or like create a training environment with it really quickly with Unweave with like a couple of buttons, and we figure out how to actually run it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. The era of sort of everyone training their own model might be peaking, but the era of everyone fine tuning their own model sort of might be still growing. I think it's a good view. Thank you so much for taking the time. Good stuff. Good product. And best of luck.
Thank you.
See you soon. Next up, we have coming to us from Japan is Shun, who's working on Retreat. Shun,
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
we can hear you loud and clear. Take it away.
Okay, hi all. I'm Shun, and the CEO and the founder at the Retreat. We help distributed companies to coordinate a corporate offsite. In remote, there are a lot of distributed companies. It would work well, but team building is a new issue as they have no office. So they need to find a new way to just bring team together. It's a corporate offsite. The number of offsites are increasing rapidly, and their attendee rate is usually higher than 80%. So they want to meet in person nowadays. Our customers, we are tailored to the size of the Series B companies. It's really hard for people ops to control more than 50 plus employees. The market size, actually based on our past case studies, the annual average spending for offsite is around 300K per company. We can find 38,000 distributed teams on the LinkedIn. So the market size would be estimated at 11.4 billion. Usually the people ops in the company is supposed to coordinate on an offsite, but they are not travel professionals, and planning offsite is very, very complicated. They can book the hotel by Expedia or booking.com in group booking. They need to send RFP to the hotels directly. Managing attendees are very hard, and finally, budget estimation costs their precious working hours. All the way currently, they use Google Spreadsheet to manage all the itineraries and book everything. It's too cumbersome work. So we provide employee service, venue sourcing, custom itinerary planning, and full event management to help people ops organize a perfect offsite for their team. It's not only for people ops, but also for their employees. They can respond to the surveys or any booking information on the app. It helps us keep our retentions too. We are overgrowing. Currently, we have a 40K monthly revenue, and our annual revenue would be estimated at almost 200K. We are also distributed teams. I'm CEO and a tech person, so I'm investing in the technologies to improve UI and build a productive system for group travel. Jack has expertise in the travel industry. He has run some travel agencies before. We are backed by the strong investors like Jason Karakani, so we passed the launch accelerators, and invested by the Dan, the CEO at the deal, and Pioneer, of course. And we are fundraising as a seed round right now also. Thank you so much.
Great, Shun. Thank you so much for that. Let's start us off with a question about how the money flows in this industry. So I imagine a lot of the money today goes towards like hotels, planes, travel, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. How are you looking to capture more value in this space?
Actually, so so we are because actually they have a lot of budget actually, because actually they had an office for actually so team gathering and before, but actually so that's a office budget, which is a move from actually office budget to the offsite budget nowadays. And so and actually maybe the most actually some expense is maybe hotels. Maybe like every time just if you actually find 100 people, maybe 70 almost 70K or something. Every time.
So you're saying the trend is that because there are fewer offices nowadays, the budget for offsites has increased and will continue to increase as remote becomes more popular. So you imagine there's going to be more budget for this. Do you think that more of that money is going towards like hotels and travel, or like the things that that Retreat is building in the space? You think more money is going to be able to go to software and the stuff that powers the offsite? Is that the vision for you guys?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, we have actually two types of the business models. One is actually so we can get the commissions from the hotels, and every transaction we can get more other percentage from get a commission from hotels, and actually we can charge and service fee to the clients, because that's a lot of actually complicated process, and so for the manage people and like booking of course, and the sourcing venues, and we can just get a charge as clients for the service fee also. But actually it's almost getting a commissions more right now is a commissions of high rate related to our revenue.
Got it. So you're saying that you're getting money from two sources here. One is obviously the software piece of helping people coordinate this instead of using Google spreadsheets. And the other piece of it is if you get kickbacks from the hotels or airlines and that kind of thing when it comes to these mass bookings. Understood. So tell me a little bit more. So I understand what you're doing today. You have a great list of customers that you're helping power the offsites for. What does the evolution of this company look like over the next 5 years or so? What does Retreat look like then?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question. Thank you so much. And actually, we are just better on the more the offsite market, at first, because actually offsite would be the main movement maybe for in the remote era. It's not only for the corporate. Actually, maybe it's for the school. Sometimes actually, the universities actually get me to get a quote for us also, and so school trip, of course, and actually, so maybe the Web3 community should start actually offsite. So offsite or market would be the expanding, I think. So actually, we are more actually focusing. We are actually to the buildings actually products for actually them with actually market expanding, of course. Yes, that is actually our we as actually see actually the feature actually. So because actually in previous products actually model was actually I failed because actually we are more focusing on only just a product. We are just seeing the more market. The market is very important for startups, I think. So actually we are see the future with the market. The offsite market would be the very expanding. So this is our in the future. Brand,
So I understand what you're saying here in terms of the market expansion, where you're basically saying, look, we're starting with offsites, and that's obviously expanding with more companies going remote. But there's also the same kind of problem around coordination exists across other organizations. If you're, like you said, a community that's looking to do a retreat, or if you're like a university or a school looking to do a trip, all these places deal with the same problems of coordinating and booking, and the solutions they have today aren't sufficient. So I understand that. So tell me more about the product evolution. So kind of today, right, you power the software to do all this sort of stuff. Is that changing at all over the life cycle of the company? How does that sort of expand?
Yeah, actually, so of course, actually, we are actually our product is currently it's a 50% manual, 50% automatically. But actually, so we are focusing on the more 100% automatically. Just we don't actually use actually, so we don't hire the operators, just only the customer support, and we are more the actually finding venues and what's the sourcing venues and booking and everything. We should make it more automatically to build the product, because actually, so and travel industry is a very manual and legacy industry. So actually there, every time actually to the booking hotels by the calling and from the emails, everything. So we should actually remove any manual process or from the travel agency stuff. So actually, so we as a tech companies, of course, actually, so we are built, but it's kind of the DX thing. So actually more migrate from the manual stuff to the automatically implementation product.
Got it. So if I understand it correctly, you think that one of the levers you can use to increase revenue is kind of just increasing margin here by automating a lot of the rote processes that go into the booking and the back and forth with organizations. I see. Cool. All right. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Shun.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Shun. Next up, I'd like to introduce Firat, Age, and Tolga, who are working on Permify. They're in Turkey.
Hey everyone, my name is Firat and I'm the co-founder of Permify. Permify is an open source authorization service for building secure and flexible permission systems. So what is authorization actually? It's a process of controlling who can do or access something. So for instance, on Google Drive, you can control the owners of a document and their access rights. Every company needs to deal with authorization, but everyone keeps reinventing the wheel. They build in-house solution by spending thousands of engineering resources. But even doing so becomes harder because something has changed. Basically, the world starts moving from monolithic to microservices infrastructure, and customers start expecting more advanced access control features. These changes actually brought additional complexity to this engineering problem. So enter Permify. Permify is a centralized authorization service that helps you model your authorization logic easily and connect to your existing workflow. So you can ask Permify, can user one view file one, or a list of resources a user one can view. And how do we know this is a problem worth solving? Besides that, we live through this problem while working with Fortune 500 companies. We speak with dozens of architects and engineers. And we launched our MVP based on these feedbacks 2 months ago. We're already running a pilot with a leading fintech company, and we have more than 600 stars. So what's next for us? Our beachhead customers are in fintech and healthcare industries. Plus, usually there are more than one authorization system within a mid-sized company like this. And principal architects are the decision makers. So this creates a great opportunity to leverage our open source community and make bottoms-up sales. So as you know, IAM is a big market, but application level authorizations has never been solved yet. So there's a big opportunity to become a Stripe of authorization. Team consists of me and my 2 co-founders. We know each other for 10 years since high school. We built more than 10 products, and eventually we co-founded a product agency and work with Fortune 500 companies. All of these experiences lead us to build Permify. So thank you for listening. Our investors are Pioneer and 500, and we are looking to raise our pre-seed extension now.
Okay, very good. Now, tell us a little bit about just who you view as your main competitors.
Who are main competitors? Yes, so our main competitors are first do-it-yourself, then libraries, and also there is policy decision.
What libraries? Well, like what's the biggest open source library that's a competitor?
Yeah, Caspian is one of the biggest open source libraries, but this is not a very sustainable approach to microservices, because when you get in the library, there is one language you can build authorization with, but when you are in service, you can just set up this service in a Dockerized environment.
And how many people use Caspian, this open source library?
Caspian has more than 11,000 stars, I think, maybe
Okay.
thousands of people.
So people are clicking star. We don't really know if they're using it, but they're at least taking the time to click star, which is a signal. Okay, so you guys are sort of commercializing that open source repo. And what are your plans in sort of terms of go to market? Like how are you going to acquire customers?
Yeah, our first approach is like, this is not driving a value or revenue. So this is a cost cutter. So we are doing a bottoms up sales. So we are really focusing on our open source community by generating content and community activities, because there is more than one authorization system within a company. And usually the decision makers are architects. So they can find our repo and use it in one of those authorization systems. Then we can expand into other authorization systems within a company. And this makes us much stronger and lead those companies to our cloud approach or cloud offering, basically. Yeah. This is how we are doing.
That makes sense. How long have you been working on this?
We've been working on this more than 6 months, but we have really pivoted a lot of things, and we launched our actual repo, this product, around 2 months ago.
2 months
this
ago.
is like, yeah.
So that's great. I mean, things are moving quickly. And what do you feel like you've learned in the last 2 months?
Yeah, what have we learned is like, first of all, teams need governance in terms of product. So we built this product thinking of like, they can just use this in Dockerized environment easily and upload our schema kind of thing. But we learned that teams need governance like CI/CD. First one is this. And then we learned that scalability is a big issue for companies. So that makes us powerful in terms of like storing authorization data. And probably we learned that security engineers need auditing tools and maintenance tools to check these authorization systems. So our next goal is to build these systems. It's not a near future goal, but build these systems to add additional buyers, security engineers to make upsell.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, thank you again for taking the time. Very compelling stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for
software gets more complicated and I think more robust as more software reaches the world. I imagine complex authorization will matter too. Good luck, guys.
Thank you, Daniel. Goodbye.
All right. And last and certainly not least, we have Luke presenting Pixels in the San Francisco Bay Area. All right, go ahead, Luke.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. So yeah, I'm Luke. I'm the founder of Pixels, and we're essentially building Web3 Zynga. So this team has been building a game for the last 8 months, and essentially the game that we built is kind of like on-chain Farmville. We have a pre-alpha that's live right now, and in the last month, we've actually released a lot of new updates that kind of have polished the game and made the game experience better. And we've seen some really awesome growth from that. We've gone from 2,000 daily active users to over 18,000 daily active users. We have a Discord community of over 50,000 people now. And what we're seeing in the space is this pent up demand for blockchain gaming. Early entrants proved how big this market was, but the current games in the space have been very slow to adapt, and we actually haven't seen many new entrants in the space in the last year. And we think this is because games in general, they're extremely hard to build. 50% of Web2 games, they never even launch, no matter how well funded they are. And then Web3 adds complexities that are unspoken. Web3 gaming is still very much deep tech, and the design challenges are also extremely difficult. You have to think about game economy and token structure and all that. Essentially, you need a really experienced and technical team to succeed in the space. And luckily, we have that. We have a core team of 11 people, but interestingly enough, we also have 3 of the founding members of a game studio called Gamehouse. This team exited back in 2008, but they made hundreds of games played by tens of millions of people. And what's really nice is that we essentially get to bring their playbook into Web3. So Gamehouse had a strategy of building one engine that was used across all of the games that we built. And we're kind of taking the same approach. We've been taking a tooling first approach to building, and we built an entire suite of tools that allow our designers to build blockchain-backed game mechanics without any code involved. This tooling has allowed us to build our first game really quickly. We launched our NFT back in January. We have a blockchain-backed beta shipping in November. And it allows us to build other games really rapidly as well, too. The interesting thing that we can do with this is we can also link all these games together with one utility token and essentially build a network effect with this token. And this essentially allows us to build a 2D metaverse. To us, the metaverse is an interconnected experience of multiple games. And with this multiple game approach, we can actually build games that target multiple audiences, and we can link them all together in this shared universe with one token. The opportunity in this space is really big, and it's really exciting to us. The team is uniquely positioned to be building this space. And what we're really after here is building out the next generation of Web3 gaming. So we have a live game right now, or we have a game that's live out right now. I would really encourage you to check it out and play it. And that's just a tiny peek of what we're building, but there's a lot up at Pixels right now.
All right, Luke. Thanks for the presentation. First off, your traction looks great, and it's awesome you've gotten so much validation from the community so far. So you kind of touched on this in the presentation about having kind of this underlying token that powers like a network of games, this 2D metaverse that you alluded to. Can you tell us a little bit more about the advantages of building this ecosystem or this game in particular in Web3?
Yeah, so we're taking a lot of inspiration from how games monetize in Web 2. I love the idea of a soft currency and a hard currency. So Clash of Clans is a really good example of a Web 2 game that monetizes like this. They have one currency in their game called coins. Players can progress the entire game without buying any of this hard currency, but they have a premium currency too that makes the experience a bit better. How we look at our games and this network of games is monetizing off a hard currency across this entire ecosystem. And then essentially what we can do with that too is build a network effect out of this token. One issue with Web3 games and games in general is they have very limited lifespans. A typical Web2 game that's considered a huge success, they boom for 2 months, they falter, and they lose their users after like 2 to 3 months. Those games make a ton of money. They're considered a big success. And like in Web3, the games aren't really getting set up for that way. With this, we don't have to rely on the success of one game. We can build out a network effect and kind of, de-risk the reliance on the hit of one game with using a shared token between all of these games.
So it sounds like a core part of your strategy, if you were to make the comparison to Zynga, is that you understand that certain games can be one-hit wonders and drive like a large percentage of revenue, and you need to launch a lot of these things in order to get the ones that hit. And the other part of your strategy is being able to iterate very quickly on this, and that not taking a team of dozens of developers and many years to launch a single game, but doing it in a matter of months, which is like insane for anyone in the gaming world who has worked in like publishing or whether it's like building games is a pretty hard and long process. So tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of that lets you do this. You talked a little bit about the team of Gamehouse developers of building this underlying engine, but can you go in a little more detail there of like what actually enables you to launch so quickly?
Yeah, so our team is extremely technical. We have 4 engineers on the team with CTO experience at VC-backed companies, and this team is really good at building DevOps and also the deep tech challenges as well. We're taking a tooling first approach to building these games, which essentially allows us to create different iterations of these games really quickly. And the whole idea is whenever a developer is building a feature, they don't actually directly build that feature. They build a tool for a designer so that this designer can build the feature. So essentially what we're doing is experimenting with letting other people use our tools, and then iterating off of these tools as well too. Reskinning, targeting different audiences, targeting different markets, all with the same engine.
Got it. I see. So tell us a little bit more about the marketing towards the Web3 gamers versus Web2. I know you touched on this earlier, but are there kind of a different set of needs or desires from, because it sounds to me like when I see the success of Axie Infinity or some of the other games that are out there, there seems to be a lot of demand for it. But what are the kind of different things that this community cares about?
Yeah, so we've grown to 18,000 DAU on maybe $3,000 of customer acquisition spend. And that's one of the really unique things about Web3. The user acquisition is very different. Then also the community building Web3 is very different too. In Web3, there's a ton of communities out there that have very strong ties, but actually nothing to do inside of their communities. We get to provide these communities a place to gather, to hang out, to actually give utility to their communities. So part of the strategy is we're working with Web3 communities that are existing already, and we get to onboard and give them utility. And the other part too is the other interesting user acquisition stuff that we're up to. We're doing some really unique stuff in this space in terms of reading on-chain data, targeting direct competitors via on-chain data. It's so cool. I'm really into the
tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah, one of the awesome things about blockchain and blockchain marketing is you get a direct view of all the people who are very likely to use their your products. So we get to scrape things like the users of Axie Infinity, users of other play to earn games, and we get to directly target these wallets or directly target users who are likely to use our game. All the data is there and like free for us to take. I don't see many people taking advantage of this kind of stuff, but it's been a really awesome user acquisition strategy for us early on.
Interesting. It kind of reminds me of the open source playbook of like, if you're an open source company, you kind of already know who your potential customers are. They're all out there, maybe starting a repo or similar repos, and it's just a matter of getting in front of them and bring them to the fold. So it's really interesting that you're using that playbook. Cool. So I guess 5 years from now, like what does Pixels look like, as if you're going to make the Zynga comparison? I guess I can imagine, but what do you think?
Yeah, so the initial go-to-market is Web3 gamers. We can onboard communities already existing. We can onboard people who are already familiar with this space. There's a lot of barriers to entry in the Web3 gaming space right now. Like even setting up a MetaMask is pretty difficult and a huge barrier compared to Web2 games where they hyper-optimize every single part of the pipeline of a game. But here, we still really believe that most people will be onboarded into Web3 through gaming. So we want to make games that people who know nothing about Web3 still want to play. We want to make games that are up to par in quality. We want to make the UX and the onboarding experience really good too. And then also it's the type of game that we're building as well. Crypto can generally be very off-putting to a lot of people. We're making games who target a different type of audience than the typical crypto audience. Like for example, Farmville and like Stardew Valley, two of the games we're taking a huge amount of inspiration from. Their demographics are typically split like 50-50, male, female, all of that too. So the type of games that we're making are really important to that as well.
All right. Thanks so much, Luke, for that. Great presentation, awesome traction. Excited to see what kind of games you're going to be building.
Sweet. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Luke. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the great peppering and Q&A. We just as sort of an overview and reminder for you guys, we saw today Tether in New York, who's building a collaboration feedback tool for web teams. We saw Unweave, that's sort of making instant serverless machine learning environments. We saw Retreat, which is building remote team offsite planning. Permify, which is sort of building a production ready authorization API, and Pixels, which is making a Web3 Zynga. So those are the companies we saw today. Yeah, hopefully, if you want to follow or can get in touch with any of these guys, feel free to click the follow button and we'll put you in touch. I want to use this as a final chance to thank two classes of people. One, our pioneers, obviously presenting and putting their presentations together. Second is our team, the people sort of behind all this. I just get the chance to be the person that has a cup of coffee and walk you through everything today, but it's really built by a crew of fantastic people. Andrew and Mishka and Paras and Rishi and Tree and Wes. So thank you all for making today possible. And that's it from us now. Stay tuned. We have some exciting updates coming down the pipeline and obviously more teams and pioneers. And so if you sort of want to stay in touch, obviously the best thing you could do is fill out an application and try your hand at becoming a pioneer. If not, subscribe to our email newsletter and we'll try to keep you posted as things unfold. So thank you again, guys. Hope to see you all soon.